In this video, you are watching the renewed remnants of a stunning medieval building undertaking. The Fortezza fortification was built on the hill of Castro, which is situated north of Rethymno. This fortress is one of the best preserved examples of Venetian military architecture in Greece, which reflects both Italian, Ottoman, and Moorish influences. Today, the Fortezza Citadel is the main attraction and landmark of this charming and picturesque town. This impressive fortress provides panoramic views of the Venetian harbour, the beautiful blue sea, its coastline, and Rethymno town, while in its background can be enjoyed gorgeous views of the distant peaks of the White Mountains. The Fortezza fortress is also an ideal spot for observing the sunset across the horizon. During my visit to Rethymno, I stayed at the Nefeli Studio, located right next to the eastern side of the municipality park. It is merely a 15-minute walk from the central bus station and 5 minutes from the old town. Providing an ideal mix of value, comfort and convenience, the Nefeli Studio offers a budget-friendly setting with a fridge, flat TV, private bathroom, laundering machine, and a balcony. The kitchenette comes with all necessary equipment and utensils for preparing small dishes. The building across the apartment and the city park also provides shade and fresh air to the Nefeli Studio, shielding it from the hot Mediterranean sun. Because of its excellent location, the accommodation was very quiet during my stay in this apartment. The Venetian Fortezza fortification was built on the low hill of Castro, which is situated north of Rethymno, overlooking each part of the city. According to one speculative theory, this hill, on which the Fortezza Citadel is situated, was initially an islet connected to Crete by a thin strip of land. This tiny strip of land was gradually expanded with sediment deposits, and the hill of Castro subsequently joined the mainland of Crete. Castro in Greek means old castle, which indicates that in antiquity an older structure existed on the top of this rocky hill that dominates the landscape and looks over the crystal blue sea, while in its background can be enjoyed gorgeous views of the distant peaks of the White Mountains. Indeed, in the 3rd century CE, during the Roman period, when Rethymno was an independent city with its own coinage, there is a reference to a sanctuary of Artemis Roxia on the hill. Furthermore, some historians argue that this hill was probably the site of the Acropolis of ancient Rethymno with its Temple of Apollo, although this has not been proven to date. Even if this supposition is correct, it would be very difficult to prove it, because this hill was leveled and expanded for the new constructions on this hill. In other words, the old temple was presumably dismantled and reused as material for a new construction project, while its foundations and other archaeological evidence were destroyed during the process of leveling the Castro hill. Either way, the Venetians took control of Crete at the beginning of the 13th century, following the Fourth Crusade, when they were granted the entirety of Crete. Much later, they also recognized the important strategic position of this rocky ridge looking over the bay, located on an important maritime route halfway between Harnia and Chandax, modern-day Heraklion, the largest ports of Venice in Crete. Furthermore, in the 16th century, this was also a necessity prompted by the increasing threat that a large number of pirates posed to Crete and other dispersed Venetian possessions in the Aegean Sea. And especially, this was necessary after the Ottoman Turks subjugated Greece mainland, and established their hegemony over Anatolia and the entire Balkan region. All of this made Rethymno, as well as the whole of Crete, a logical target for future Ottoman expansion, especially when they seized Rhodes in 1522. The city fortifications and this fortress were built between 1540 and 1570 and is one of the best preserved examples of Venetian military architecture in Greece. This impressive fortress is visible from every part of the town, and at night with light on, Fortezza Castle provides an unforgettable sight. In return, breathtaking panoramic views of Venetian harbour, Rethymno town, and the coastline to the west are offered to its visitors, and for this reason, the Fortezza fortress is the ideal spot for watching the sunset into the horizon. In fact, the fortification of the entire city had begun way back at the end of 1530, after the Ottoman corsair and later the Grand Admiral of the Ottoman Navy, Hayred and Barbarossa seized the city. But the foundation stone was officially laid on the 8th of April 1540 according to the design of the Veronese architect Michel Sanmicheli, one of the greatest military architects of that epoch. The construction itself progressed very slowly due to lack of financial resources and manpower until eventually, this enormous building undertaking was almost complete by 1570. These newly erected city walls were insufficient and ineffectual in protecting Rethymno from maritime raiders. Now, I am entering the main square of the Fortezza fortification. On my left, you can see the Ibrahim Han Mosque. This central part of the Fortezza also housed the food storerooms and water cisterns, the rector's residence and the councillor's residence, where one of the two Venetian city councillors lived, while the other remained downtown to uphold the order in the city. This two-story building that underwent modifications during the Ottoman era, after the most recent restoration, now houses the workshop for conserving antiques. It is most likely that the prisons were located in the building that is part of the Palazzo Pubblico complex, which is located northwest of the Ibrahim Khan Mosque. The Ibrahim Han Mosque is also located in the central part of the Fortezza fortress. Originally, this structure housed a Venetian cathedral church consecrated to Saint Nicholas. The church was turned into the city's first mosque in 1648, and dedicated to Sultan Ibrahim Khan, who was ousted and executed that year. During this reconstruction and transformation, the Turks expanded the original building and added an enormous dome with a base diameter of 11 meters. The solid square structure with this impressive dome has survived intact since these Ottoman times. Take some time imagining the history of this building which sits atop the Palais Castro Hill, and the role this edifice played in the past of Rethymno during the Venetian and Ottoman period of rule. It is a cultural monument today used as an exhibition center. Pay particular attention to the spherical triangles in the corners created by the arcs on its four walls as well as intricate design and decorations in its interior, especially the spectacular dome, which is ornamented with wonderful tiles that mosaic really replicate a medieval depiction of the heavens. Keep in mind, during the Venetian and Ottoman eras, the Fortezza castle did not serve as the cultural and religious center of Rethymno but the administrative and military hub. An integral part of the Palazzo Pubblico complex was also the residence of the rector who was the Venetian governor of the district of Rethymno. The construction of the rector's residence began in 1575 and was finished in 1582. It is a rectangular building formed by two vaulted spaces with particularly thick walls. The first rector to reside in the palace was Anzolo Baracci. He moved to the palace in 1583. Anzolo Baracci continued to make modifications to the construction until 1584, because he considered the building was too high, and too exposed to the hill of Ius Athanasios, situated in the western part of the city. Written records from that era describe the Palazzo Pubblico as a lavish, imposing palace with 49 entrances, 81 windows, 2 stairways, and many balconies situated in the central piazza of the Fortezza. Sadly, none of the buildings of the Palazzo Pubblico complex have been preserved, except part of the jail, which Baracci had built east of his residence. Now, you are watching a range of food storage rooms and water cisterns, which were placed along the north wall of the Fortezza. In 1571 the corsair Uluk or Kilik Ali Rice attacked Rethymno with 40 galleys. He was born as an Italian with the name Giovanni Dionigi Galeni, who was taken as a prisoner by the Ottoman Navy while he was traveling by sea to Naples. Since then he has served as a mercenary in the Ottoman galleys for many years. After his conversion to Islam, he gained his freedom back, took the name of Ali, and started his career as an authorized naval pirate by serving governmental interests of the Ottoman Empire. Gradually advancing in the Ottoman military hierarchy, Uluk Ali Reis was awarded the post of governor of Algeria. When he launched the assault on Rethymno, Venetians had abandoned the city, leaving behind only 100 men who were unable to resist for long because the walls of Rethymno were not strong enough to withstand the attack of the Admiral Uluk Ali Reis. He succeeded in breaching the walls, and after looting, he razed the town to the ground, as well as the fortified walls, of which only the gate of Portaguaras still stands. For his services during this campaign, Uluk Ali Reis was appointed Grand Admiral of the Ottoman fleet. This second destruction of the Rethymno and the fortified city walls, as well as the fall of Cyprus to the Ottomans in 1571 too, prompted both the local authorities and the Venetian Senate to build a much stronger fort. The Venetian rector Alvise Lando laid the foundation stone of the Fortezza Citadel on the 13th of September 1573. The bastion fortification system of the military engineer Sforza Pallavicini, which was the pinnacle of Italian military architecture at the time, served as the basis for the construction of the Fortezza Citadel, with a few necessary additions, upgrades, and alterations. Under the guidance of master builder Yanis Skordilis, the Fortezza was constructed over the course of these 7 years with the assistance of 40,000 pack animals and more than 100,000 Cretans who took part in compulsory labor. By 1580, the public buildings within this Venetian stronghold of Fortezza were finished. And finally, after a large number of modifications and adaptations, the fortress was completed in 1590. This general design of the fortress provided new forms of defense that were necessary due to the appearance of gunpowder. Its bastions were joined by straight stretches of thick curtain wall, sloped outwards to deflect enemy projectiles without causing significant damage to the fortress. Now I am strolling up the flagstone-paved old ramp of the Fortezza Citadel. This ramp used to bring up the cannons, ammunition, and defenders is preserved in good condition, and it was recently renovated. From the bastion of St. Luke, there is an amazing view of the blue sea below as well as of the city of Rethymno. This Cavalier bastion, which provided a gun platform elevated above the main bastion, significantly strengthened the defensive walls of this fortress. The Venetian stronghold of Fortezza is an irregular polygonal building with walls of 1307 meters in length. The infrastructure of the interior space was well planned. Public buildings were located at a distance from the walls, ammunition stores were housed on the safe northern side, and a square formed the center of the fortress. There are 4 ramparts at the south and east sides and 4 bastions protecting the walls of the fortress citadel: St. Luke, St. Elijah, St. Paul, St. Nicholas. In addition, this fort has 3 gates, the most remarkable of which is the east gate with its magnificent archway. It seems that the Fortezza of Rethymno was not built for the defense of the island but simply to serve the needs of the Venetian garrison and administration. It was easily climbable with ladders due to its modest height, lack of a moat, and big and high towers, as well as buttresses supporting the relatively low walls. And indeed, although it was a great defensive construction of that epoch, due to the absence of a ditch, a cholera outbreak within the castle, and a narrow, unfortified harbour that was too small for large Venetian galleys to dock there, Fortezza Castle resisted for only 22 days, when the Turks besieged it in 1646. Especially, when it is compared to the heroic resistance of the Candia fortification in Heraklion, which held out for 22 years. It should be mentioned here that the much larger city of Harnia also relatively easily surrendered to the Ottomans a year earlier, after 56 days of siege. By the year 1677, the Cretan pre-war population of circa 260,000 had dropped to about 80,000 due to diseases or warfare. The Orthodox Church of St. Catherine is the building to my left, directly in front of the Ibrahim Khan Mosque. As this small church was built with materials taken from the old ruins, it appears much older than it is. In fact, it dates back to the late 19th century, while the belfry was added in 1985. The Venetian-Ottoman Wars also exhausted the economy of the Venice Republic, which had once prospered because of the lucrative trade with the Ottoman Empire, as well as due to the opening of the new Atlantic trade routes. The Fortezza is not only a historical monument but also a hub for culture and the arts, especially during the summer months, when both locals and visitors come together for a variety of exhibitions and cultural events that draw inspiration from the city's medieval past. The 20th century open-air theatre of Erifili, located in the southern portion of the citadel, is named after a play by the Cretan dramatist Georgios Chortatsis, who was born in Rethymno and was a contemporary of William Shakespeare. The stage is placed in an amphitheatre surrounded by tall pine trees, which provide shade for this semicircular construction below. Rethymno's best example of Renaissance writing is Georgios Chortatsis' five-act tragedy Erifili, whose dramatic events take place in Egypt. In spite of its tragic ending, which was the usual outcome of any great love during the Renaissance, the Erifili is a piece of art that expresses immense human empathy, a profound sense of loss for its other half, and a deep sense of dignity above all. This theatre piece also highlights a person's right and desire to follow the inner calling of the heart, which is why it has been so popular up to the present date. Generally speaking, compassionate romanticism, a deep comprehension of Cinquecento personalities, and a profound mental and emotional insight into the depths of their hearts are qualities that mark all of his Renaissance works. His extensive understanding of Italian Cinquecento literature and the classics is evident in all of his works. In his honor, since 1987, this open-air theatre has been hosting the annual Rethymno Renaissance Festival, which offers plays by notable Cretan, Italian, and European Renaissance playwrights. For this reason, hundreds of artists from all over the world gather in Rethymno every year to take part in the festival, which offers theatrical, musical, and dance performances, colorful imagery, and art exhibitions celebrating the city's rich Venetian legacy. Although many public buildings have not been preserved, the Fortezza is a great place to visit because of its spectacular views of the distant peaks of the White Mountains. Furthermore, from the Bastion St. Paul, visitors to Fortezza Citadel can also enjoy breathtaking views down to the city, re-experiencing its rich cultural and historical heritage. As its architecture reflects both Venetian and Ottoman influences and styles, visitors can get a unique glimpse into both cultures that have shaped the history of the entire island of Crete. Currently on display is a large two-story armory and artillery depot, where cannons and weapons were stored during the Venetian and Ottoman periods of rule. Nowadays, it hosts cultural events and exhibitions. Take note that all large public buildings have flat roofs to facilitate rainwater collection. As you make your way to the St. Elias Bastion, you will pass one of the many tanks of the castle, used for collecting water from the rooftops. In addition, a large cistern beside the mosque collected the valuable rainfall to supply water during the difficult periods of siege. While enjoying an iced coffee, it is appropriate to introduce the new administration of the Fortezza Citadel. Actually, this lovely black cat proudly serves as the governor of this stronghold. A distant descendant of the rocky dove, the rector's loyal courier pigeon keeps her informed on latest events in the Mediterranean. This pigeon courier replenishes his stomach with stony minerals after a strenuous flight, just like his distant ancestors did, which is what gives these birds their renowned toughness, durability, and strength. He deserved it based on the rector's and her counselor's leisurely and relaxed demeanor for the good news he brought. Rather than employing costly soldiers, and accommodating a noisy and unruly mob of people, they employed garrisons of singing crickets and other beneficial insects to keep the Fortezza tidy, orderly, and happy. As a result of these reforms, there is only one councillor, while upholding order in the city was left to the democratically elected town major. This adaptive reform is part of the new administration strategy of back to basics because the medieval Venetians used courier pigeons to send important messages since their arrival on Crete in the 12th century. As it was simpler to enter the city from the east, the main gate is situated between the bastions of St. Nicholas and St. Paul, on the eastern side of the citadel. The main entrance is a large archway, which has allowed the easy passage of wagons and weaponry. I am now entering this medieval arch gallery and heading out of the castle towards the old town. Note, some visitors use its shade as a shield from the scorching sun of Rethymno. Once through the archway, the sunlight comes back, and I proceed to explore this bygone past that is still present in the old town's blend and fusion of Venetian, Ottoman, and Cretan architectural styles and influences, and its narrow, stone-paved streets. In front of me, you can see the old Ottoman pentagonal ravelin which defended the main gate of the Fortezza. Since 1991, it has hosted the Archaeological Museum of Rethymno, which was temporarily relocated to the Venetian Church of St. Francis. For adults, the admission charge is €4. In the center of the old town, you can view Minoan pottery, as well as collections of coins, artifacts, weapons, helmets, and wonderfully ornamented stone sarcophagi. With the conquest of the city, a new situation began for the Venetian stronghold of Fortezza. The Ottomans made few modifications to it, including building additional houses for their more numerous garrison and administration of the city, mainly on the south and east sides of the fortress, as well as the aforementioned ravelin outside the main gate. The Ottomans ruled Crete for more than 3 centuries. Political intrigues in the Porta led to frequent ousters and assassinations of the ruling sultan, gradually weakening and destabilizing the Ottoman Empire. After several uprisings, the great powers agreed that the Ottoman Empire should not rule over Crete. As a result of their intervention, the Ottoman forces were expelled from the island in 1898, and the independence of the Cretan Republic was proclaimed. Its annexation to the Kingdom of Greece occurred practically in 1908, and juridically in 1913, after the end of the Balkan Wars. At the turn of the 20th century, almost the entire area of the Fortezza was filled with private houses. By stationing their soldiers and deploying their artillery and machine guns on the northeastern side of the Fortezza, the Germans exploited this stronghold to defend their military positions against attacks of the Allied forces during World War II. As many buildings were damaged or destroyed, after the Second World War, the pre-war residents of the Fortezza castle began to move out to other parts of Rethymno. Inside the Fortezza itself, all the ruined houses and buildings were dismantled, including the local prison that was moved from the Palazzo Pubblico complex too. The demolitions of residential buildings were finished in the mid-60s of the 20th century, but unfortunately, along with these small cottages from the Ottoman era, some important historical buildings vanished too. Today, only the outer walls of the Fortezza Citadel are preserved intact, while only a small portion of its public, military, and religious buildings have been renovated, allowing visitors to imagine and visualize for themselves what it was like to be a resident or soldier in this fortress during the Venetian and Ottoman rule. In any case, it will take you at least 2 hours to view this inherited, cultural treasure, as well as to explore its gates, bastions, ramparts, storerooms, and underground munitions vaults. Even the visitors who are not interested in archaeology, history, or cultural heritage, will still have a great time. A walk around the fortress itself provides breathtaking views of the azure sea, the blue sky, the coastline, the town, and the hills and mountains that are in the distance well beyond the stronghold of Fortezza. I hope I managed to give you a visual presentation of this impressive fortress. I am sure you have undoubtedly also taken note of picturesque narrow alleyways full of flowers, charming houses with wooden balconies, lots of souvenir shops and taverns, shops selling unique jewelry or trendy clothing, restaurants with tables set against the walls on one side and tourists strolling by on the other, cafeterias, as well as shops that bake delectable desserts all day and night. These narrow streets, residences, and buildings feature an architectural combination of Venetian and Turkish styles, as well as influences from Greek culture. There are also gorgeous surroundings and beaches around the city to make your vacation even more enjoyable. You are currently watching the Church of Our Lady of the Angels, which is located to the east of Rethymno's Old Town. It is a three-aisled basilica dedicated to Mary Magdalene of the Dominican order and built during the last years of Venetian rule. The church does not have a dome, and the bell tower was added later. I hope you enjoyed this lovely fortification walk around the most popular landmark of Rethymno Old Town, which featured the renewed remnants of an outstanding medieval building project. This video about Fortezza Fort has also been adapted to meet the needs of people with restricted vision or hearing, as well as for blind or deaf and dumb people. The history and inherited cultural assets of the Fortezza Fortress were the main topics of this documentary. Thank you for watching it. Special thanks to the musician Roa, whose tracks, Splash, Start, and Colorful, were used as background music in this video. It's under the Creative Commons Attribution license, promoted by the website chosic.com.